Hello, fellow Econauts, and welcome back to our show. I'm here with my brother Ben, the Rocket Man, and today we're talking about rockets again. Hey, Ben, how are you?
Yeah. Oh, what a surprise. Hi, fellow Econauts. Hi, Simon. How's it going? We will talk about super heavy rockets to be more specific.
And what are super heavy rockets? Maybe we start with that question first.
Yeah, I mean, we had an episode about rocket categories, and there we had a definition already laid out. But just as a reminder, any rocket heavier than 50, or any rocket which is capable to lift 50 metric tons or more into orbit is considered a super heavy rocket.
And what are the more famous super heavy rockets so that maybe some of our viewers can. All right, okay, fair enough. Um,
Well, I mean that's the most famous, I guess. We have before 2020 there has have been about 18 launches of super heavy rockets, 16 of which was the Saturn V for the Apollo mission, bringing people to the moon. There have been two Russian launches as well. We can show a little infographic here. These are the older ones. Since 2020, there are a couple more in development. There's a couple Chinese ones, but then obviously the more famous ones is SLS for the Artemis mission, and obviously Starship, which had so far two launches, none of them into orbit so far. And obviously Starship is a big game changer for that category.
how about we take a look at the economical potential for super heavy rockets?
Yeah, so as we already discussed a little bit in the rocket category episode, there's two sides of this discussion. One side, they firmly believe that small launches are the way to go because you can specialize and you can deliver for certain missions into low Earth orbit. And then there's the other side. They believe that a super heavy launch vehicle can bring more at once into orbit and therefore reduce the cost per kilogram. Obviously, SpaceX is a believer of the latter, hence developing Falcon Super Heavy and Starship. And there's many others who believe in the first side of things. I think Super Heavy has a very strong potential economically, but there's one key element which was missing so far, and that's why rockets like the SLS and also Apollo back in the days have been super expensive being launched. But now, and that's where Starship sort of comes into the equation. Starship is a two-stage rocket, meaning that the first stage at some point detaches from the actual Starship, from the spacecraft, and the spacecraft then can go into orbit. Not only can the booster rocket, which is called Super Heavy actually in this case, land back in close to the launch site and then be reused. Also, Starship, the actual spacecraft, can potentially land again and be reused. And even more so, Starship can be refueled in orbit, which means now, as we explained many times, when you launch from Earth, you always use 90%, about 90% of your fuel. In a super heavy rocket, meaning it means that a lot of fuel is just being used to get into orbit. If you now have something in orbit which can be refueled, obviously you have a huge capacity. And Starship bringing the lunar lander, the human landing system for Artemis to the moon, completely refueled, could potentially be used many times for missions where astronauts for the Artemis program can use that lunar lander from Gateway back and forth. So I think what I'm saying here is the potential economically having, a readily available and reusable spacecraft like that, which is proven in such an environment with NASA and sort of approved and gets that stamp, will have a huge potential and a huge impact on the economics.
If Starship can be refueled in orbit, if that is actually the next step that they can actually put on their checklist that they have done that, then you have the ability to really go back and forth because, as you already mentioned, most fuel is been used to actually get into orbit, but traveling from Earth to the moon orbit, for example, is basically not as fuel
No,
intense than it is to actually get into orbit. But I
that's
also
correct.
think that for missions where you have to send a satellite into orbit, because it's most of the time low Earth orbit anyway, I believe.
Well, for the current sort of market, it
Yeah,
is low Earth orbit, but it depends totally what you want to do. GPS satellites, for example, they have to be brought into the geosynchronous orbit, and they have to be delivered with a heavy or super heavy rocket.
I understand. But I
Yeah.
think for other satellites, it might make more sense to have like smaller rockets available to
Well, it
basically like
depends. Yeah.
sniping them
Again,
into the orbit, right?
yeah, depends again how you see that. So I am a firm believer as well that super heavy rockets are the way to go, because it's a centralized superhighway to a low Earth orbit, and you can, rather than sending multiple rockets into low Earth orbit, you send one rocket with a lot of payload. Um, Having said that, it starts to make more sense once you have a more rapid reusability, meaning, and also more launch windows. If you only launch once a year or every 2 years, then obviously it takes a lot of time for payload to be collected and delivered, which can potentially mean for some companies that they can't maintain their business for the time being. But um, if you have weekly launches of super heavy vehicles, then at some point, it becomes a on-demand delivery. And that is something I don't believe small rockets can provide, because there you need to build a new rocket pretty much every time.
So it's basically what you say is like the large cargo ships make more sense than, sending a small uh, boat to deliver packages.
Exactly.
That's
Yeah. Yeah.
basically.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and if we look at the cargo ships that we have available right now, they're also capable of stacking more on the deck, right?
Exactly. Container ships,
Yeah,
right? So you have
container ships.
container
Yeah,
ships,
that's
they
exactly
have
what I was
standardized.
referring.
And I think that's the other big advantage. Once we start to standardize more in orbit, in space in general, such as refueling, now suddenly this opens up complete new markets. And also now imagine having starships readily available in orbit, which can be refueled and then do another mission. They don't have to launch again from Earth. They are already there. They could be just refueled and then do something else. They
Yeah,
could,
for example,
tugboat things
yeah,
and
they
yeah,
could, for example, collect the satellites that have to be, come back
yeah,
to Earth anyway,
yeah, yeah,
and
yeah,
and therefore we have like less space junk. Hint, hint, we had a space junk episode as well that you
yeah.
can watch on our channel. But yeah,
Well,
we
yeah,
would
that
have basically the space junk problem, so to speak, also basically a solution right there, right?
well, the low Earth orbit space junk I don't see as a huge problem, because that will eventually burn up into atmosphere anyway. But we have still other satellites, and also just imagine you have a more expensive satellite and it doesn't unfold perfectly because something goes wrong with the solar panel deploy. So now having something in orbit, you could now potentially send a smaller satellite, which is equipped with a robotic arm, which can sort of make that satellite usable again, and you can save a lot of money instead of building a complete new satellite. Or you could, or eventually, if all satellites also are equipped with refuel ports like Starship, now you can extend their lifetime as well, so that you don't have to send that many satellites. I think in general, building modular design and standardized design for satellites as well opens up so many more opportunities, but we are far from that now, because there was no superhighway to space, and I think this is sort of the next step. We need a superhighway to space.
And I think we saw that also with computer. I mean, we grew up in the 90s where basically everybody had like their own ports to connect a graphic card, a sound card. I remember that we still had to buy a sound card separately from graphic cards. And
Mm.
also a printer may not have had the same, plugin. So you had to have an adapter or dongle or
Yeah,
whatever,
yeah,
There
yeah,
was
yeah,
so
yeah,
so much hardware actually going around when it actually became like more standardized, it was like so much easier to also develop hardware for computer,
Yeah.
right?
I'm just saying
Yeah,
this
USB
here,
stick. Yeah, here you go.
which is also now getting older, right? So USB is the universal
Yeah,
serial bus,
here you
right?
go. Yeah,
Universal is already getting old, and now we have USB-C is already now the standard. Even iPhone has to use USB-C now as a verdict from Europe. So it helps. It helps a lot to make things easier, and also to reduce waste. That's because that was the main driver for deciding that. And I think that the same will happen for space as well.
I think so too. Well, let's keep it short and simple for today. And I hope you learned something in this episode. If you did, please don't forget to leave a like, subscribe if you haven't already.
And don't forget to smash that notification bell.
Exactly. And also leave a comment. All right. Have a good one. Bye bye.
Bye.